Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the epic narrative.
I'm excited. I'm excited. I know it doesn't take much to get me excited, but I'm excited about today because this episode, like I remember writing it, and I remember a lot, but when I saw again, I was like, oh, I like this one. This one's a good one because this is not one that we often see, or hear about because it's, well, it doesn't help a lot of preachers manipulate people's behavior. That's why. And it's long. So I don't know, maybe I don't know how long this will take me, but here we are. We're in Judges starting in chapter 10. And we're going to start in verse 6. I'll read our way up there because I know technically we ended chapter 9 last week. So at the time of Abimelech, the man Ishgar named Tola, son of son of Dodo, rose to save Israel. He lived in Shamar, the hill country of Ephraim. He led Israel 23 years and then he died. No big stories, right? Verse 3, he was followed by Jar of Gilead, who led Israel for 22 years. He had 30 sons who rode their 30 donkeys. They controlled 30 towns, which this day is called Havajar. That's terrible. I know it's terrible. I know. You'd think having a podcast, I'd say, let's spend some time making sure you enunciate things correctly. But I just want to get to the stories. And then when he died, he was buried in Kamar. So you got a couple guys that led for 23 years, 22 years. The one who had 30 sons also had, 30 donkeys, which was a sign of royalty. It was a sign of wealth. And they each had their own town. So that's how he kind of ruled. He didn't rule, from a throne. As most seem to, whether his throne was just his easy chair in his house or whatever, but he had his 30 sons and they probably all coordinated and communicated and worked things out, that sort of thing. Anyway, so that's how he led. And then we get to Jephthah, and that's where we're going to spend most of our day here today. Jephthah is a mighty warrior, and he's from Manasseh. Now his father raises him. Verse 6, again, the Israelites did what was evil in the eyes of the Lord. They served Baals and Asherahs and the gods of Aram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the Amorites, the god of the Philistines. And because the Israelites forsake the Lord and no longer served him, he became angry. Oh, God's angry. And sold them into the hands of the Philistines and the Amorites. For that year shattered and crushed them. For 18 years they oppressed all of Israel, even on the east side of the Jordan, to the land of the Amorites. The Amorites crossed the Jordan to fight against Judah, Benjamin, Ephraim. Israel was in great distress. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord, "We have sinned against you, we've forsaken you." And the Lord this is awesome. The Lord replies, I saved you from Egyptians, Amorites, Ammonites, Philistines, Sidonians, Amalekites, the Moabites. You cried for my help. I saved you from all of them. But now you've forsaken me for other gods. Go cry to those other gods and see what they say to you. Israelites are like, no, we have sinned. We'll do whatever it takes, whatever you think is best, but please rescue us now. And they got rid of all their foreign gods among them, and they served the Lord, and he could bear Israel's misery no more. When the Amorites were called to arms and camped at Gilead, the Israelites assembled the camp at Mizpah, and the leaders of the people of Gilead said to each other, whoever will take the lead in attacking the Amorites will be head over all who live here. All right. So Israel's in a big heap of trouble. And when you view God as a master slave owner, then you approach him with the idea of what do we have to do to make you happy enough to come through for us again? And a lot of people approach God that way because they all, at some level, view themselves as slaves. God is the master, and we do what we need to do when the master's angry with us. We do what we need to do to make the master happy with us because we need the master to come through for us. And the master is in control of all things. And if he's in total control, then it's his fault that all the bad stuff is happening to us. And it's his fault when all the good stuff happens to us. And it's our fault because we didn't it's all behavioral mindsets and manipulation, and we'll keep going over it because it seems to be a recurring theme in so many people's lives and in the lives of so many churches and so many sermons and so many preachers throughout all of the history I know of. So they go to God and they're like, we're really sorry. And supposedly God does this manipulation thing. Well, I saved you from all this list of people and now you've done it. So go talk to your idols again. No. So without any further ado, they get all the idols out of their lives and they get together and they say, we're going to go to war. And the Amorites there, is it the Amorites? They all show up to do battle. Now, this is a coordinated battle. They're not trying to do this the next day or anything. They're like, hey, we'll show up at the valley. You show up at your side of the valley. We'll figure this out. So they all show up. And they're like, hey, we need a leader. I mean, that's crazy. The leaders of the people of Gilead said to each other, whoever will take the lead in attacking the Amorites will be head over all who live in Gilead. This is when they're looking for a leader. They probably had various leaders, tribal leaders, clan leaders, family leaders, people that could get messages out and have meetings and decide on things, but nobody wanted to be the leader. So Jephthah, the Gilead, was a mighty warrior. Verse 1 of chapter 11. His father was Gilead. His mother was a prostitute. Gilead's wife bore him sons, and when they were grown up, they drove Jephthah away. You're not going to take any of our inheritance of our family, they said, because you are the son of another woman. So Jephthah left his brothers and settled in the land of Tob, where a gang of scoundrels gathered around him and followed him. So this guy's history is fascinating, right? So you have Jephthah, a mighty warrior. He's from Manasseh. His father raised him with his half brothers, but he was born to a prostitute. Now his name means he will open or God will. So basically his name means either way we're getting this done. Either I'm doing it or God's doing it. Either way, resistance is futile. So the brothers grow up. They're old enough to see that dad is dying. They're looking around. They're saying, we're not going to split the inheritance with our half brother, who's the son of a prostitute. We're going to keep the family line pure. So they're probably in their 20s at this point. And they kick Jephthah out. And he leaves. There's no fighting that's noted. Now, he might have seen it coming. I'm guessing there was rumblings and grumblings and sarcastic remarks and some accusations and talk about bloodlines and purity and all that kind of stuff. So he probably saw this coming. He didn't want to turn against his family. He didn't want to, kill them I was going to say beat him up, but he would have had to kill him. He didn't want to kill his half brothers in order to obtain the inheritance. So he left. And he goes to Tob. Now, I think a lot of this, honestly, is also he's honoring his father, who probably is still alive, dying or very, very old. And he's thinking, I appreciate the fact that as the son of a prostitute, you took me in, you took care of me, you raised me up to this age. Now you're dying, and I'm not gonna turn the family into a bloodbath. I'll just walk away. Kind of like Jon Snow. Although he wasn't what he thought he was, but that's all part of the story. Anyways, so Jephthah goes off to Tob. While he's there, well, Tob, you want to know where Tob is? Sorry. Tob is like an outlying area. It's east of the Jordan. It's kind of outside the tribal boundaries. And there he builds a following of scoundrels. He's got a reputation. He's a fighter. He's a killer. I mean, verse 1, he's a mighty warrior, which probably means not that he's killed a lot of people, but he's known for his fighting skills. He's known for his accuracy, probably with a sling and an arrow and a spear and hand-to-hand combat. There's lots of ways that he could have been already building this reputation. But anyways, he moves out there. He probably had to fight a few times. He probably had to take on some local scoundrels, but he kept winning. And eventually, basically, he became their leader. So he's not only skilled as a fighter, he's skilled in combat, he's skilled in leadership, and he's very skilled in negotiating and working out deals with that threat of violence. Because he basically has like a cartel situation going on. He's got a group of guys who are very loyal to him, and they fight, and they've eked out an existence in the outer rim, in the wastelands. And when you get out there, pretty much he's the law. But he's not just a bloodthirsty lunatic. He's a wise warrior who understands negotiation, and he's going to end up on top. So, with that in mind, the Amorites who lived in the land given to Manasseh, Jephthah's homeland, sometime later, probably 5 to 10 years, they're raiding, they're fighting again, and the local leaders aren't leading. Nobody wants to step up. Nobody can negotiate. There's no one that will lead them into battle. So, let's see. Sometime later, verse 4, when the Amorites were fighting Israel, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah from the land of Tob. Come, they said, be our commander so we can fight the Amorites. This is awesome, right? They remember him. I'm sure his reputation was still out there. It had been a few years. There was family involved. They need a leader. They need someone who is willing to die. They need a combat warrior. So they reach out to him. Be our commander. And what's he say? First of all, let's review. Verse 7. Didn't you hate me and drive me out from my father's house? Why do you come to me now when you're in trouble? He's like, yeah, why am I out here? Why did you have to come way out to the outer rim to see me? It's because you backed my brothers and edged me out of an inheritance. So what the brothers did basically is what we're seeing here. They didn't just ask him to leave. They legally cut him out. And the elders of Gilead sided with the brothers. They gave this half-brother, son of a prostitute, no legal standing, no inheritance. So he goes, you sided with my brothers. And now you're talking to me when you're in trouble. Why don't you go talk to my brothers? That's basically what he's saying. You sided with them. You thought that they were all the good guys. I was the bad guy. I was unwanted. I was the one that you rejected. Why are you here now? Why aren't you talking to them? That's really what he's asking them. And It's a really good question, right? And basically, they own up to it. They're like, yeah, we did reject you. Yeah, we sided with your brothers, but now we want you. We want your men. We want your reputation. We need a warrior. Verse 6 is where they say, or verse 8, verse 8, sorry. Nevertheless, we are turning to you now. Come with us, fight the Amorites. You will be head over all of us who live in Gilead. And Jephthah answered, well, suppose you do take me back to fight the Amorites, and the Lord gives them to me. Will I really be your leader? The Lord is our witness. We will certainly do as you say. So again, we have to look at that word, right? So he's like, all right, they say, you will be our leader. And that phrase needed defining. Jephthah makes it clear. He says, if I go, will I really be? If I take the lead of the tribe and not just win the battles, will I really be your new leader? In other words, I get that you're asking me to lead the battle. And basically, he's probably saying, that's not a problem. I can lead your men. We will win the battle. I'll keep my men will be with me. I have no idea how many he's bringing in, but they all trust him. They all love him. They all fight for him. He's like, I'll bring my guys. I'll combine them with your guys. We'll win this battle. But if I win, if the Lord gives the Amorites into my hand, will I really lead the whole tribe? Absolutely. Oh, yes. This is not a temporary position, which is basically what leading the battle was in their original phrasing, right? They were saying, will you temporarily lead us? And he's like, no. If I come do this, it's a permanent leading. And they were like, yes. All right, we agree. So he secures positions for himself. The men who have followed him, he's like, we're going to move out of the outer rim, out of the Badlands. We're going to move out of here. We're going to move into town, so to speak. We're going to have cities that we will oversee. We'll have resources that we've never had before. Like, our life is going to get easier. First, we have to go win a battle, which we can do because we're pretty awesome fighters. And in verse 11, so Jephthah went with the elders to Gilead, and the people made him head and commander. See, two things. Head and commander over them, and he repeated all the words before the Lord in Mizpah. Then Jephthah sent messengers to the Amorite king with questions. What do you have against me that you have attacked my country? And the king answered Jephthah, and he said, when Israel came up out of Egypt, they took away my land from Arnon of Jabbok all the way to the Jordan, and now I want it back peaceably. And Jephthah sent back messengers to the Amorite king saying, this is what Jephthah says. Israel did not take the land of Moab or the land of the Amorites when we came up out of Egypt as Israel. We went through the wilderness to the Red Sea. And basically he starts a history lesson. So after he makes it official, of course, the Amorites, I'm sure, get word that, Israel now has a commander. And they know who he is because he's been living in the Badlands for a while in the outer rim, and they all understand who he is. Nobody messes with him. You go up there, you go at your own risk. You work out a deal with the local cartel leader, and it'll work out. You'll get something, but he'll get something as well. So he sends messengers. And the Amorites receive the messengers from Jephthah. In other words, that's a way of them saying, yes, we understand that you are the leader and the commander. And they say, we want it. We want our land back. You stole it. We want it back. We'll do it peaceably. You guys are immigrants. You need to go live somewhere else. You came up out of Egypt, and then you stole our land. And Jephthah, from verses 14 to 27, he basically gives them a history lesson. And in verse 21, during the history lesson, he says, then the Lord, the God of Israel, gave Sihon and his whole army into Israel's hands, and they defeated them. Israel took over all the land of the Amorites who lived in that country. So he's like, listen, I understand that you think we took the land. We didn't. And he's like, we tried to come through the land. You wouldn't let us. We had to go around the land. And then you picked a fight with us. And now we won. And so the land became ours. That's not my problem. That's our God did that. Our God figured this out for us. So that's your, this victory over your king was 300 years ago. And in verse 23, now since the Lord of God of Israel has driven the Amorites out before his people of Israel, what right do you have to take it over? He's like, we've already been given this land. God gave it. Our God gave it to us. Our God says we rule over you. Why do you want it? Will you not take what your God gives you? Likewise, whatever the Lord our God has given us, we will possess. He's like, everybody does this. In other words, he's treating Yahweh, the God of Israel, just like all the other idols. He's like, if your God, Chanuth, or whatever his name was, gave you the land, you'd take it. Well, our God gave us the land, so we took it. So by the time you get down to verse 27, he's like, I have not wronged you, but you are doing me wrong by waging war against me. Let the Lord, the judge, decide the dispute this day between the Israelites and the Amorites. He's like, let's just do battle. Right? This is how idols get things done. Jephthah is doing life just the way everybody else does life in all the various countries. He's like, let the gods decide. We'll do battle. Whoever wins gets the land. The king of Ammon, however, paid no attention to the message. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Jephthah, and he crossed Gilead and Manasseh and passed through Mizpah of Gilead, and from there he advanced on the Amorites. So basically, he evidently was negotiating not from the valley where the armies were stationed. He was negotiating politically with the leaders of the Amorites that were not in the valley. And when they refused him, when they didn't listen, when they were like, we don't need a history lesson, he was like, all right, then off to war we go. And he marched him and his men through a couple towns into the valley and took over the army where they were seated or where they were camped. And in verse 30, he says, and Jephthah made a vow to the Lord, if you give me the Amorites into my hands, whatever comes out of the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Ammonites will be the Lord's, and I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. Now, this vow does not come from God. God did not require any of this. Jephthah decides he's going to make a vow. This often happens, right? You get put in charge of something. You make a few predictions. You get yourself to the top of the pyramid. You are up there, and now you're going to make a big display, a big announcement to the people, whether it's to your family or to the church or whatever. This is what I'm going to sacrifice because I expect all of you to sacrifice even more than I am. But as your leader, this is what I'm willing to sacrifice. Whatever comes out my door, he's thinking maybe my dog, a goat, whatever, chickens, something's going to come out. But this is not a call from God for him to sacrifice anything. So they basically go into battle. It's a quick battle. 32? Jephthah went over to fight them, and the Lord gave them into his hands, and he devastated 20 towns in the victory. I mean, basically, he was like, yeah, we're not just winning here in the valley. We're going to beat them back. And he does. And they beat he beats him back for a while. And then it says, and when Jephthah returned home, who should come out to meet him but his daughter, dancing to the sound of timbrels? She was an only child, except for her, he had neither son nor daughter. And when he saw her, he tore his clothes and cried, "Oh no, my daughter, you have brought me down, and I am devastated. I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break. My father, you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me just as you promised. Now that the Lord has avenged you and your enemies and the Amorites, but grant me this one request. Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends, because I will never marry. You may go," he said, and he let her go for 2 months, and her and her friends went into the hills, and they wept because she would never marry. And after 2 months, she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed, and she was a virgin. And from this comes the Israelite tradition that each year young women of Israel go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gilead. So I know this is weird. I mean, you can't get around this. But he makes this vow, and the first one out is his only child, the daughter, and he weeps and he repeats the vow to his daughter, and claims that God is requiring this vow to be fulfilled. Jephthah made the vow. God never asked him to, but both he and his daughter, they believe that God is a master that has to be satisfied. If you say you're going to sacrifice and you don't sacrifice, then the master will become angry and more people will die. And the daughter believes this. Jephthah believes this. So when she hears the vow, she's like, I agree, Father. Do not renege on your vow. I get it. Because they believe God is a killer and requires human sacrifice, or he will take human sacrifice if you don't fulfill your vows, they're all in on this. And she's like, give me 2 months. Give me 2 months. Now I have a note here to go back to chapter 10. Why do I have this note? Verses 6 through 18. Why am I? Oh, that's the history lesson. Got it. So basically, we see the lie that he believes that God is a master to be fulfilled and is in control of all things. We see that in the history lesson that he gives the Amorites. All right, thank you. And this is how God is presented, both in teachings and in writings. So she understands she is being sacrificed. 2 months to mourn, never being married. That's what she's mourning. Now, I think that that's important when it comes to what the idea of a sacrifice means. She's never going to be married. Now there's, for some, right, this means that she will be alive, but she will never be married. She will be sacrificed to God as a, quote, burnt offering. Her life would be consumed for God. Her whole life would be offered up like that of an animal on an altar. The wording is is identical. So the fact that she asked for 2 months to go mourn the fact that she'd never be married is different language, I would think, than somebody who believed they were going to be tied up, put on an altar, have their throat sliced, and burned, in essence, alive. I'm not saying that that's not what Jephthah did. I'm saying that the language supports not killing her. When she returned, Jephthah did what he said, whatever that was. I don't know what it was. I don't know if he burned her alive or if he just sacrificed her. And sacrificed her whole life. He, no grandkids, no family line, no nothing. And yeah, so it's a conversation. I don't think God requires a death. So I like the idea that there's a completely legitimate way of looking at this and interpreting the language and saying she didn't die. I don't think she died. Now we get to chapter 12, and Ephraimite forces were called out. They crossed over. They said to Jephthah, "Why did you go fight the Amorites without calling upon us? We are going to burn down your house over your head." He's like, "I and my people were engaged in a great struggle with the Amorites, and although I called, you didn't save me out of their hands. When I saw you wouldn't help, I took my life in my own hands and crossed over and fought them alone, and the Lord gave me victory. Now why have you come up today to fight me?" Jephthah then called together the men of Gilead. They fought against Ephraim. The Gileadites struck them down because the Ephraimites had said, "You Gileadites are renegades from Ephraim and Manasseh," and the Gileadites, whatever, captured the fords of the Jordan leading to the Ephraim. So basically you have like a civil war going on. Ephraim's claiming, "You never asked us to be a part of this victory. Now it looks like we're weak and we don't participate with you and we're bad people. So we're going to kill you now and take over your lands. Because you know what? You don't really matter. You're not really one of us. You're a half-blood, blah, 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 blah." Now, they were part of the decision to call Jephthah, but now they want to rule. So that's what they're after. And that's what their statements are saying. We wanted you to lead the army, but now we don't want you to lead us. So one tribe fights the other. He calls out the Gileadites as rebels from the family. Oh, sorry, verse 4. Gileadites end up winning the battle. And this is what they do. They block the way for the survivors. So in order to get across the fords, you had to talk to a Gileadite. And because of a particular way that people say things, as far as Ephraim was concerned, the way that they said the word Shibboleth, I can't say it. They didn't say it the way that the Gileadites did. So they would ask them. They would say, when they want to cross the river, they'd say, "Let me cross over." And the Gileadites would say, "Are you an Ephraimite?" "Oh, no, I'm not." "Okay, then say this word." And if they said it, they would let them through. If they couldn't say it correctly, they would kill them. So 42,000 Ephraimites ended up dying between the battle and those that were trying to cross the river and couldn't say this word correctly. This is crazy. None of this is God's plan. None of this comes from anything but Jephthah and his warlord type of mindset, okay, from when he lived in the Badlands. It's pretty crazy. I mean, I think about the word, for me, the word garage. Now, when I say the word garage, it comes out like garage, but evidently that doesn't compute for some people. That's like, no, that's not how you say the word garage. You say garage or whatever. Like, I can't even say it the way that they say it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I always call it a garage. And people just chuckle. My kids chuckle. They say it differently than I do. Anyways, so that's kind of what was going on at the river. Hey, are you an Ephraimite? No, I'm not. I'm just headed to do some business across the river. Okay, well, say this word. And you can, I'm sure some were sweating and some probably, were hid out in the bushes and practiced. Okay, say it right. But under the pressure, literally, of death, they say it the way they normally say it, and they're just dead, and they're dragged off to a pile of bodies. Anyways, what a way to go. And then we get kind of a quick list. We'll just finish up the chapter. Quick list of other judges. In verses 8 and 9, after him, Isban of Bethlehem led Israel. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters, and he gave his daughters away in marriage to those outside of his clan. And for his sons, he brought in 30 young women as wives from outside the clan in order. Basically, that was just a way to kind of keep the peace for the sake of keeping civil war down, that sort of thing. And then we see there that somebody there had 40 sons and 30 grandsons. Verse 14, he rode on 70 donkeys. He led Israel 8 years. Again, donkeys, expensive, signs of royalty and leadership. Just to have one was a privilege, but to have 70 was huge. And these were the type of things that that were noted, and evidently things that you wanted to keep in mind when you were telling stories about these guys, that they were wealthy, that they were favored, that they had possessions, that they led for a certain amount of years. And as long as Israel had a leader, they generally followed the Lord. And what did we learn from Jephthah? He was, I don't know. Was he a good leader? Well, he gave God credit, and the people followed the Lord because they believed God to be this master, and they had pleased the master, and they kept the master happy, so good things happened to them. It's not the way God wants it, and yet so many people live that way anyways. So many people are possessed with that mindset that God is the master, it needs to be pleased, and they lead good lives, and they follow the master. And yes, you can live your whole life with a slave mentality between you and God, and believe that he is in control of all things and manipulates all things. And sometimes he manipulates things against you, and sometimes he manipulates things for you, but his ways are not your ways, so you need to just trust him, blah, blah, blah. Or you can move from that position into a position of truth, which is you are a child of the King. You are a son of God. And you approach life completely different. And that's my hope for you as you continue to learn about those who work off of non-kingdom principles, principles of hierarchy, principles of slavery, that we will learn from these and decide not to live that way, but to live like Jesus taught us, because he is the true word of God. All right, everyone, have yourself a great day. I'll see you next week on The Epic Narrative.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
All right, everybody. I like this guy, Jephthah. Jephthah. I think that's how, right? Who knows? I'm sure I'm saying it incorrect as somebody who actually speaks the language. But either way, I like this guy as a character to describe. And he's somebody that I don't remember hearing about, like, growing up at all. I'm confident that I've heard of him in Bible school when we studied Judges. But as a character, and I'm not saying I agree with him, I'm not saying that, he's a great guy. He's just a great character. And as a storyteller, you enjoy somebody with that kind of depth. The family rejection, the brothers, the whole the whole story. I just got done talking about it. I just really liked it. It was a good week. I like this week. Hope you did too. For sure. Next week I'll give you some details on what's going on, but it looks like my wife and I have full-time jobs, and that is going to be awesome if things continue that direction, which means we will, for the first time in 4 years, not be losing money every month. We won't necessarily be making money, but we won't be losing it. Whew, that'll be nice. And speaking of money, I could still use your help. We have, like I said, we've drained ourselves on this journey, and part of that, is the podcast. A lot of you have helped, but we could use it again. If there's somebody out there that can give regularly, whatever that amount might be, $50, $100, $200 a month, that'd be awesome. That really helps. If you just can do a one-time thing, that would be awesome. Any which way you can. We have, you can give it through Zelle, you can give it through Amazon, not Amazon, you can give it through, not Amazon Prime, what do I want to say? PayPal, thank you very much, Bob. And you can just give it to Apple Pay, right directly to my phone. Just direct message me, and I will give you that information you need in order to make that gift, so that we can keep this thing rolling. Because I'm excited. To keep it rolling. And who knows? Maybe someday we will be big, and people will be like, "Wow," and you'll be able to say, "Yeah, I'm one of the ones that kept it going. I'm one of the ones that got us this far." So thank you very much for those of you who helped. Thank you again for those who will help, and I look forward to talking to you again next week here on The Epic Narrative.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.